You. Hello, everybody on YouTube and Twitch and everywhere else. John Arbosis here, wearing the fun hats already on TikTok. How's everybody today? We're here to talk Ukraine, and I'm going to try to control my voice today so I can actually get through this without getting scratchy again. I've got to learn that. Well, the funny part with the voice is, for some reason, when I do video, I project, but when I do audio alone, I don't. So like I was doing my podcast for 4 years, never had a problem with my voice because I had the microphone and I was alone and I could just sort of, it was nice, but when I'm on camera, I project. So I'm trying to get my projection voice down because the mic is sitting right here. So I don't need to project. Anyway, we shall see. Anyway, guys, so how are things doing? As always, TikTok is already getting a decent number of folks. So I may start right away. As you know, what we do here is I do about a 20-minute update on the latest news from Ukraine, and then I take your questions. And unless TikTok has turned on the Q&A box at the bottom again, if they haven't done that yet, I've asked them to, go to my profile, click the Q&A button, and you can put questions there. For you all over there, this is my laptop over there. You guys are my iPad. You guys can submit questions in the bottom, and you can always do the super chat questions if you want to make me really happy. And for you guys, finally, if you do the GIFs, I will always try to do a shout out for the TikTok GIFs because I like them. And they're funny, and I think they're a nice break. Let's dive right in, guys. So what is going on with this counteroffensive in Ukraine? Getting very interesting in terms of watching the experts talk about it. I had even asked Jim Sciutto, who's CNN's one of CNN's defense experts, national security experts, a very long time in Washington, smart guy. And I even reached out to him on Twitter, and he got back to me, which is kind of nice. And it's one of the things I like about social media, especially Twitter. You can reach out to like big journalists, and they'll get back to you. It's kind of cool. But he was talking about interviewing some Ukrainian military folks who were saying that this is a shaping operation and not necessarily a counteroffensive. I'll tell you about a second of what that means. Then I was reading additional news saying the same thing, okay? And a number of experts saying the same thing. Now, shaping operations are basically when you are trying to shape the battlefield for a future big offensive, okay? So an example would be, if you think back to the Iraq War, the first one, okay? The good one, the just one, when we were going after Saddam Hussein. And first, the Air Force went in and bombed the hell out of his troops, right? Just bombed them incessantly. And the idea was to shape the battlefield to make it safe, or at least more easy for American troops to then roll in, tanks and infantrymen, you name it, right? Everybody. So that's what shaping the battlefield is. It's shock and awe, but the concept is making the battlefield softer, so that the big push can finally come in more easily. In this case, it would be Ukrainians hitting ammunition depots. And the idea is you blow up the ammunition depots and you make it much harder for the Russians when the big battle happens. They don't have enough ammunition. You blow up bridges. Same idea. You blow up the bridges, so when the big battle happens, they can't get reinforcements, they can't retreat, but also, since the bridges are blown up and those forces are still fighting anyway, small skirmishes, they're starting to run lower and lower on ammunition because they can't get new ammunition. They can't get new fuel. So what they're saying is that these are still actually shaping operations, even though they're quite big. They're shaping operations for a coming offensive that is still not happening yet by the Ukrainians. Little confusing because to me, I feel like they've been shaping. Well, this is funny. Okay, Carol, perfect point. Carol on TikTok says, seems like shaping has been happening for a couple of weeks. That is the exact question I posed to Jim Sciutto at CNN on TikTok, on Twitter. And I said, I'm a little confused because what he literally listed as shaping was going after command and control, which are military headquarters, going after ammunition storage, which we know the Ukrainians have been doing for 2 months, right? Going after bridges and things. Again, they've been going after bridges for 4 to 6 weeks. And he said it's really a matter of the intensity, that they have upped the intensity significantly of the shaping. So they're going after the same targets, but they're going more harshly, just that, hitting them 10 times harder in essence. Now, I will say this. I think we may be being spun a little bit just because at the same time, we're hearing from the Pentagon, we're hearing from British military intelligence that the Ukrainians are making some advances and the Russians are being pushed back in some places. in terms of the occupied areas of Ukraine. They're trying to be a little cautious about it, I think, because first of all, it's not clear that the Ukrainians can permanently get this land back. Who knows? But again, what's interesting to me is that you are seeing some Ukrainian advances on the map and some Russian forces having been pushed back on the map. So to me, that's a little bit more than shaping, right? But I think we've got shaping with maybe the best way I would put this, almost as a, not a joke, but the way we sort of in politics, we'll say Democrat with a small d, possibly meaning democracy versus Democrat, possibly meaning not quite a Democrat, like a little d. In this case, maybe it's a counteroffensive with a small c and a small o, right? So they are trying to push the Russians back, but they're still trying to just blow the Russians up in terms of cutting off everything. So the Russians get weaker and weaker, and then at some point, the Ukrainian forces come in hard. Now, some folks are already weighing in. Let me see here, because I always like when you guys weigh in, because a number of you are actually military experts or military folks. Kelly Fonts is saying, I think the big counteroffensive will come in October. Lend-Lease will take effect, and the first wave of 10,000 troops being trained by NATO will go back home to Ukraine. That's an interesting point. That's true. We've got the 10,000 troops that are being trained in the UK, and I didn't think of that. You're right. It was about a 3 or 4 month training, which brings them back around October. That's a good point. What else we got here? Okay, that's what we got. And then Lucien, we got to keep hoping. Exactly. Thank you for that, Lucien. What did I miss here? Butterflies. Thank you, Valerie, for the butterflies. Sorry, I was looking over at the laptop for that. What else we got here? Yeah, so listen to this also. Ukrainian officials have framed the uptick in fighting in the south, particularly around Kherson, as a counteroffensive. But the Pentagon did not describe it as such. And one Ukrainian official who spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the issue's sensitivity said counterattack was too strong a term to describe what he called a normal operation. Now, I would say, again, pretty clear, this is more than a normal operation, what's going on, but it's not a full-fledged counterattack. So, nonetheless, Ukrainian forces have reportedly established fire control, I'll explain that in a second, over Kakhovsky and Antonivsky bridges. These are two of the three, excuse me, my allergies will always kick in when I'm talking to you guys, so excuse me. These are two of the three bridges that are really important in southern Ukraine in the province, the oblast of Kherson, because remember, I told you on previous shows, most of the Russian troops in Ukraine that are occupying Ukraine are south and east of the Dnipro River. The Dnipro River is this river that goes pretty much kind of north-south through Ukraine, more or less. It jogs, but if you look at the map of Ukraine, if you start sort of at Kyiv, the capital at the top, you'll see a river going through it, and then just follow the river, and it'll kind of go like this, and then kind of exit a little to the west, southwest. Well, it exits in Kherson province. Okay, that's where it exits. It cuts across the top of Kherson. Well, the Russians tend to be south of that river and east of that river in all of Ukraine, except when you get to Kherson. Sorry, thank you for that, Messi. Except when you get to Kherson. There is a pool of Russian troops, anywhere from 15 to 25,000 Russian troops, so it's not small, that are north of the river. I say north or west. It depends which way you want to define it. But, you know, they're up and a little north and a little west of the river. Well, by going after these bridges for the last month, the Ukrainians have been trying to cut off those Russian troops that are north of the river, the 15 to 25,000 versus the rest of the 150,000, 130,000 Russian troops in the rest of the country. If they're cut off, if they don't have bridge access, they can't get new weapons. They can't get gasoline or diesel fuel. They can't get new tanks. They also can't get away. Like if the Ukrainians start coming from the north, which is what they're doing, the Russians may end up having to retreat and pull back across the river. Very difficult for them to do that if the bridges are destroyed. Now, so take this back now. And I'm forgetting where I was reading this, but I'd heard it yesterday too, on Twitter amongst the defense guys, and then read it again today, that the Ukrainian forces have established fire control over those two bridges. Fire control, I believe, and what I was reading means they're able to blow it up with artillery. So no longer do they have to worry about the HIMARS from a long distance. They are close by with artillery, and they're able to hit it with their artillery, which can go a shorter distance. That means anything trying to pass that bridge, reinforcements, anything can get blown up by the Ukrainians. And the specific point that was made here was making it difficult to resupply Russian troops north and west of the river. I always like to bring it up because that's the reason you have heard about the Ukrainians constantly hitting this river and these bridges over the last 4 to 6 weeks. Moving ahead to Zaporizhzhia. So that nuclear plant that the Russians keep threatening. Hang on a second here. Sorry, I will give a little more detail from you guys weighing in on that point first. MT History Buff is saying, by cutting off logistics and means of retreat, it seems to telegraph the intent to devastate and destroy Russian forces rather than seek their capture or allow them to pull back. Well, I guess you could, but you could seek their capture and not let them retreat. That could be part of the whole purpose of cutting off their retreat, right? To force them to capitulate and be captured. Now, having said that, I'm sure the Ukrainians would like nothing better than to destroy the Russian troops, but, depends on, well, actually, right, you wouldn't want, you'd want to capture them regardless. You wouldn't want them just to be able to retreat. Let me just look here. Okay, let me go on with this. So Zaporizhzhia, the nuclear plant, you'll recall that the Russians have been, someone has been bombing the nuclear plant. The Russians claim the Ukrainians claim the Russians. A lot of us, I'm still suspicious it's the Russians, frankly. The Russians have been using this plant for three purposes, really. One, it is the largest nuclear plant in Europe. It's in southern Ukraine, more or less, in an occupied area, the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, the Zaporizhzhia province. And the Russians, they'd like to take the plant. I mean, they took the plant, they control the plant, but they'd like to take the plant's electricity. The plant provides 20% of Ukraine's electricity. The talk has been that the Russians want to disconnect the plant from the Ukrainian power grid and connect it to the Russian power grid and just steal its electricity altogether. At the same time, obviously decimating southern Ukraine because you've now taken away 20% of their power, right? Very, not great news. The second thing the Russians are doing is trying to threaten Ukraine, but really Europe overall, with a dirty bomb. Dirty bombs are nuclear material attached to a bomb that blows up, but it's the bomb that blows up, not the nuclear material. Nuclear material, like in a nuclear bomb, only blows up under very specific circumstances, right? It's got to be very exact and precise. A dirty bomb does not. What a dirty bomb does is you got a bomb, you strap some plutonium or whatever nuclear fuel to it, nuclear materials, and the bomb goes off. And when the bomb goes off, a strong enough bomb will sort of vaporize everything near it. It vaporizes the nuclear fuel, it vaporizes the plutonium, uranium, whatever it is, and throws it up into the air as fine little particles. Well, those particles blow in the wind and scare the hell out of everybody because they're nuclear, they're dangerous. They may only irradiate a city block, although with the wind, maybe they'll go farther, but it's meant as a weapon of terror. It's meant to freak the hell out of people. Now, I would also say with Zaporizhzhia, with the nuclear plant, if you were to irradiate a nuclear plant with a dirty bomb, in essence, meaning the nuclear plant itself is a dirty bomb, right? So by hitting it with artillery, you're hoping to blow something up and blow up some nuclear fuel. You also, though, could put the plant in a very serious position about never operating again because it has to be cleaned up, which can at least be very difficult. But I think they're trying to freak out the Europeans. They want the French and the Germans especially to sit there and go, oh my God, right? The Russians could blow up the nuclear plant and then it could drift west and who knows what'll happen. Could it be a meltdown? Could it be an explosion? It's just to freak people out and to get them to be less supportive of the Ukrainians and more supportive of saying, this war just isn't worth it anymore. We've got to force the Ukrainians to settle, right? So that's the other thing going on. I think there was a third point I was going to say, but I'm not sure now. So what's going on now is the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is a body of the United Nations, has sent a delegation to Zaporizhzhia, to the plant, to inspect it, make sure it's safe, because of these bombs going off left and right. And the intent, I read today, the intent is to establish a permanent monitoring presence at the plant. So a permanent presence of UN nuclear experts to make sure everything's okay. Well, the Russians today blocked the officials from even getting to the plant. So the officials had arrived in Kyiv, the Ukrainian capital, yesterday or Monday, in the last day or two. I think it was 2 days ago even. And let me just read this to you. The IAEA delegation is currently standing in line at a checkpoint in Ukrainian-controlled territory in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, which is the region the plant is in, while Russian occupiers, this is from the Kyiv Independent. You can always tell when they say Russian occupiers. While Russian occupiers refuse to give them a special pass, arguing that they could reach the nuclear plant from Russia without any obstacles. This is from the BBC. So they're close to the plant. They're not far away at all. And the Russians are saying, why should we let you cross from Ukraine? Well, it's all Ukraine anyway, but from Ukrainian-controlled Zaporizhzhia to Russian-controlled Zaporizhzhia and go to the plant. And again, it would take no time at all. When we could send you all the way around Russia, all the way around, like leave Ukraine from the north, go around Ukraine, and like literally a circle of peripheric around Ukraine, and come up from the south through Crimea, and that way you'd only be going through Russian territory. And it's like, why? I don't even understand. I mean, the Russians are just trying to be a pain in the ass, but I don't even understand the logic of what they're demanding. This whole idea of you must come through Russian territory or it's not fair or something. Bottom line is the Russians are being jerks again, and they're trying to screw up the inspection. And I think it shows that they are going to be doing everything they can to thwart the inspection as it goes on. That's my take on it. See if we got anything else you guys threw in. Nope. Now you're at that point. I always get a kick out of the folks on YouTube and everywhere else when they end up just sort of discussing amongst themselves. I try to find questions you guys have thrown in there, and it's always questions amongst yourselves, which is fine. Good for you to talk to yourselves. I'm getting to the visas. I'll get to the visas at the end here. Gazprom, the Russian energy company, has shut off natural gas to Germany again. Surprise! They've claimed that it should maybe go back on in 3 days. They're doing more inspections or maintenance or something, but they can't promise it's going to go back on in 3 days, provided that, this is the quote, provided that no malfunctions are identified. They're playing with the Germans again. They're doing this just to screw with the Germans. The New York Times adds, I'll just give you more background on the whole situation. Like other European countries, Germany is pushing to fill natural gas storage facilities before winter as insurance against cutoffs by Russia. So basically, the Germans and other European countries are filling natural gas storage as a piggy bank to have when winter hits. So they've got more natural gas than they need, or hopefully they've got more than they need, right? So they're filling up extra now. The Russian government appears to be trying to obstruct that effort as well as create uncertainty over future gas deliveries. So in other words, the Russians realize the Germans are doing pretty well at filling. They're actually ahead of schedule. The Germans are at filling up these natural gas reserves. So the Russians are trying to stop them by basically cutting off the gas early and playing games, right? So far, results have been mixed. German gas storage facilities have reached more than 83% of capacity and appear likely to meet the government's goal of 90% by November 1st. On the other hand, this is New York Times here. On the other hand, the cutoff of flows and worries about supplies in the coming months have driven natural gas prices in Europe to record levels in recent weeks, inflicting some of the economic damage that the efforts to store up gas are aimed at preventing. I know I've been reading stories about the UK and how gas prices are expected to go up, I think, 80% this winter, and they were saying that that's going to kind of be a disaster for the Brits. So that's the game the Russians are playing. I still think there's an issue going on here with the Russians where they're playing a bit of a bluff. I wonder if they're playing a bluff, and what I mean by this is I wonder if thank you, Inspired Woman. Didn't see the goggles. Appreciate that. I wonder if the Russians aren't pretending like, oh, we don't care. We're happy to shut off our natural gas in the fall and cut it all off to all the Europeans. We don't care. I wonder whether maybe they do care. I wonder whether maybe the Russians, sure, they're making a lot of money on gas, on oil right now, okay? And they're making more than they expected. But I wonder if the Russians aren't worrying about the sanctions taking hold more and more, if the Russians aren't worrying about spending all of their cash reserves, the money. Remember, they had $600 billion with a B. Thank you, Louis. B in the bank, and the Western banks were able to basically freeze half of that. So the Russians only had about 300 billion left, and they've been having to spend it to buttress their own economy and their own, the ruble. And I wonder if the Russians are so lackadaisical about what's going to happen over the winter, saying, well, Europe's a major market. We don't care if we lose Europe. Maybe, but I wonder to what degree it's not a bluff as well, because it's a lot easier. Remember the first thing the Russians did? They cut off a few of the Eastern European countries that the countries were relying on Russia a lot for gas. But I remember if it was one country or several of them, but as a percentage of Russian natural gas sales, I saw those glasses. Thank you there, Bunny. As a percentage of Russian natural gas sales, they were only like 2% of Russia's gas exports. So it was nothing. But to the country involved, it was a lot, because for the country, Russian natural gas was important. So what we saw was Russia kind of jacking Europe around, but doing it in a way that was not going to be painful to Russia. Cutting off all natural gas to Europe, all those sales, is a lot of money for Russia. And it's going to hurt Europe tremendously, but I think it's going to hurt Russia tremendously. Let's just see. But I think the Russians are renowned liars on all of this stuff. And let's see if they really go through with it. They might. But I think they're playing games. Russian independent media is saying that Russia is likely to face an acute shortage of weapons by the end of 2022. That's this year. According to the Insider, there are already very few guided missiles, while shells for artillery and armored vehicles will be exhausted by the end of the year if the intensity of the war is maintained at the current level. Let's see if it's true, but that's kind of amazing. Artillery, especially, because that's what the Russians prefer to do. They prefer to go in and just blow the hell out of other countries with their artillery. So the fact that the Russians could run out would be, almost sounds a little too good to be true, but kind of amazing. The White House is preparing more military aid for Ukraine that should be announced in the coming days. Ukraine is to receive new delivery of artillery rounds from Sweden, worth 47 million. The Polish prime minister, this was kind of interesting. Thank you, Inspired Woman, for those. The Polish prime minister, it's just sort of odd, says the European Union should be ready to accept Ukraine in a few years. Now, Polish prime minister Zbigniew Rau I only know how to pronounce his name because I work for Brzezinski. So I learned how to pronounce Zbigniew. Rau made the remarks at the Forum 2000 conference in Prague. He says Ukraine has, quote, done everything to earn the title of the country most devoted to European values. I mean, very interesting. He's only one country. I'm not convinced Ukraine will be joining the EU in a few years, but it's very interesting. Mariupol. This is a horrific story. So Mariupol, you remember the theater, the drama theater in Mariupol that had the words children written on the side in big letters, like on the ground. So the Russian planes flying over, the bombers, would know that it was filled with, it was women and children, but that it was filled with children who were hiding from the bombing, using it as a bomb shelter. Well, the Russians bombed it anyway, destroyed the theater. The Associated Press estimates that 600 Ukrainians died in the bombing. And the latest reports from Mariupol are, and again, I will say, this is wartime. It's hard to confirm all of these things. Certainly sounds credible. We know the Russians were going through the rubble and trying to rebuild it. And kind of weird that they're trying to, you're in the middle of a war. Why are the Russians trying to rebuild a dramatical theater? It's a little weird. Well, the story coming from Ukrainians on the ground is that the Russians have left the bodies there in the theater, poured bleach over them to get rid of the smell, and then poured concrete over the bodies. And they've rebuilt the theater on top of the bodies of the dead in order to hide them so that nobody can ever figure out how many people died. And the added little bit of the story that was really gross was the reason they're using, and this little details like this are what make the story sound credible to me. They're using bleach because they found that if they didn't use bleach on the bodies first, even with concrete, the smell of the bodies was able to come through the concrete, even if it was deep concrete. It's just a weird detail, that I feel like it wouldn't be necessary if you were lying. It just gives the story a little more credibility for me. Really sick, just really sick. In terms of visas, this is getting interesting. You know how there's been a push by the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. I would say the other Scandinavian countries were pushing. Denmark was pushing, I know. I'm forgetting what other countries were pushing. Probably Poland would be my guess, to cut off visas for Russians basically coming and partying in Europe while their country's committing genocide. And a lot of the more Western countries have been saying no. I mean, Hungary too, but Hungary's big surprise. Greece is saying no. They want the Russian tourists. I don't know why. Well, here's the latest on this. So the Estonian foreign minister says we will aim to stop most Russians from entering Estonia within weeks. Speaking to Reuters after meeting EU counterparts in Prague, Foreign Minister whatever, Reinsalu, noted that it takes some time, but I think timing is also critical, looking at these vast numbers of Russian citizens entering, that basically he and a number of the Baltic states are going to come up with their own program to at least cut back on Russian tourists. At the same time, the European Union reached an agreement to at least do something, which is good. The European Union reached a political agreement on Wednesday, which would be today, that would make it more difficult and expensive for Russian tourists to get visas. I looked it up in the New York Times. The New York Times is saying the suspension of the agreement. Now, this is an agreement that goes back. I don't have it in front of me. The agreement maybe goes back to 2007 or something. It's some kind of a more long-term agreement that Europe had with the Russians to facilitate visas back and forth for tourists and everything else. Makes it easier, makes it cheaper. The suspension of the agreement will make it harder for Russians to get European visas. They will cost more, require more paperwork, and involve longer delays. My favorite part of this was Russia's response. Moscow said it would respond to the EU visa agreement with its own measures. Quote, if Brussels decides to shoot themselves in the foot again, that's their choice, said Deputy Foreign Minister Grushko. Yeah, because, imagine how many Europeans are going to be so disappointed that it's going to cost them more and be much harder for them to take a vacation in Moscow as winter comes, mind you, but also in the middle of a war where the Russians are taking Westerners hostage. I mean, could you imagine any European being dumb enough to go to Moscow and do this? I mean, I just can't even imagine how stupid you'd have to be, But I just love that. Then we're going to stop you from coming to visit us. It's not even Moscow in winter. After what they did with Brittany Griner, you're an idiot if you go to Russia right now. You're an idiot. You are asking to be kidnapped if you go to Russia right now, if you are a Westerner. Out of your freaking minds. So anyway, the last little thing I was going to show you is, hang on a sec. Oh, actually, one quick second. Hold on. I get a Canadian friend messaging me. Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay. We're talking about him maybe trying to drive out here to see me because I'm in the burbs and it's harder to get to. Old friend, a Canadian friend. My God, I've already made him Canadian. Old American friend who moved to Toronto. He was living in Seattle, and boy, I'll have to get him on the show. Boy, does he have stories about Seattle. Long story. I don't want to get into it, but he was talking about that whole craziness of when they liberated Seattle, the kind of far left. Absolute disaster. It was very interesting to hear him talk about it. I mean, his neighborhood was, anyway, there were no police. There were crimes happening outside his window. Nobody would do anything about it. He said scary as hell living there. In any case, I have him on. So I was looking for the meme. So I don't know if I've got the picture. Let me find this first. And then I'm going to show you the meme. Picture of Zelensky, wife Vyshyvanka. And then I'm going to show you a wonderful meme because the Ukrainians have been doing such an insane. Actually, I'm going to show you a couple memes. Hang on. The problem is, of course, there's way too many photos when you say Zelensky's and Vyshyvanka. So there's a picture from here it is. So this was Ukrainian Independence Day, right? And I'm going to show you the picture. Now, This picture is very funny, particularly because if you look very closely at the Vyshyvanka, it's got a tractor pulling a tank. If you look at the bottom part of it, okay, check it out. The bottom part of it is a tractor pulling a tank, which I think is just fabulous. So we talk about, well, anyway, so somebody today, and they've been doing great memes. Memes are hard to describe what memes are. Memes are like, I would almost say funny cartoons or something like that to go viral online. And the meme they shared was just hilarious. So check this out. Now, this, you've got to understand, is based on the whole NAFO thing, which is the North Atlantic Fellas Organization, which is just this weird meme that took off of NAFO instead of NATO for NATO, or OFAN, they call themselves too, which I love, for OTAN, because OTAN is the way in many European languages you say NATO. So they now have NAFO, OFAN, the fellas, exactly. It's just this crazy meme that's been going on, and the Russians have been, and it's all the dog. And the funny part about the dog too is, thank you for that, putting in a husky. That was cute, Kevin. The funny part about the dog too is that's the same dog that was used for Dogecoin. So like it's a dog meme that gets used a lot. But I said, is it a husky or a Shiba? I think it's a Shiba, isn't it? That's a Shiba. I think. Well, it's hard to say. They're very close. That may be a Shiba. But what's going on is they formed this group, and it's there. The meme is everywhere. I've been raising money, for example, to get our name on the side of a Russian howitzer, which, by the way, we're up to $4,000. We need 5,000. So I'm going to keep pushing you guys. We can do this. And the money will go to help Ukrainian troops. I'm the Ukrainian howitzer, not Russian. On the side of the Ukrainian howitzer, the money will go to Ukrainian troops for $5,000. And the NAFO, these guys already paid the money to get theirs on the side, and they even got like a picture of the dog. And the Russians have been livid about this. They are convinced, the Russians and basically their sympathizers in the West, who are like the crazies, like the crazy far left, but I mean crazy, like woo, communist far left, are saying that it's a CIA plot. This meme is a CIA plot. And it's actually the US government working with all of its secret financiers and all this crazy stuff, when it's just another funny meme. And all these military guys have now picked it up. If you use Twitter or other social media, keep an eye on people's avatar, their picture they use. You're going to start seeing this crop up more. It is a Shiba Inu. That's what I thought. Yeah. You're going to see it crop up more because a lot of the military guys are just using it because it's funny and it's pissing the Russians off. Now, the last thing I want to show you, I forgot about this, a video. I may have to show each of you separately. I probably will have to show each of you separately. This, hang on a second. Pull up videos. This was, again, yeah. This is the Ukrainian Minister of Defense put this video out today, and it's absolutely hilarious. Hang on. Absolutely hilarious. Now, maybe you can both see. Hold on a second. I'm going to turn it like this. Let me turn it like this and see if I can get away with this, okay? I'm going to turn the volume up. Let's see if we get away with this, all right? Hold on. Now, I'm going to show you here. It says a message to our Russia's guests. I'll show you next. I should do it this way scared. It's just so nasty. Hold on, now I'll start it for you guys. It's just so freaking nasty, but funny. All right. So I'll go back here so you can hear it. The song is Run, Rabbit, Run. It said you have two options. There's nothing to read right now. Yeah. So run, rabbit, run. All it says is run, 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 or die. And it just, I mean, I love this on so many levels because it's funny. I mean, it gets everybody around the world to just laugh and like the Ukrainians more because, again, we're talking, it's public relations for the Ukrainians, right? It makes all of us go, yeah. It makes you still invested. It makes you more invested in them. It makes you like them. And frankly, liking them is half the battle in terms of giving more money and being supportive of giving them money because I barely know any Ukrainians. I like them. You know what I mean? It's a British war song. That's what I was wondering what it was. Okay. Were the rabbits the Huns or something? What were the rabbits? Were the rabbits like the Germans in World War I or something? What were they? It's also meant to piss off the Russians because the Russians are going to see this and be pissed that the Germans but was it World War II Germans or one? They're going to be. It sounds like World War I almost. I guess it could be either. But the Russians are going to be pissed that the Ukrainians are having so much fun and laughing at them, right? World War II, okay. But they're laughing at them. It helps buck up the Ukrainians because they think it's funny, so it gives them more morale. Just on every level, mom's phone's going off with the telephone that most everybody in America has, the same portable phone. And it personalizes exactly what Rob is saying. It personalizes the Ukrainians. It makes them more. Actually, that's a good point, Rob. It just makes them more human. The fact that their Defense Department would even do this, Mom has a landline because Mom is 92. So I insisted she keep both the landline and her cell phone just in case. Trust me, Mom wanted to get rid of it and I wouldn't let her. All right, that's it for the news. So we can discuss the news, discuss questions, whatever you guys want on this. I can see Flanagan and Allen's song about Germans. Run, rabbit, run. Why rabbit, though, too? Like, I wonder, what's that about? Operation Starsky? Oh, I remember him. Yeah, I remember Operation Star. Oh, he did comedy videos? I didn't know that. I remember that guy, though, yeah. I'm going to pull up TikTok to see if any of you put questions on TikTok. Q&A. I'm starting to hear across social media platforms from journalists that if Putin continues as is, Russia becomes like North Korea. I guess depends what you mean. I assume you mean, kind of a Stalinist dictatorship. I don't know if it's going to go that far, but they're clearly going there. Oh, I see. Just run fast as a rabbit and get out of there. Yeah. A rabbit is a symbol of. Oh, that's true. Rabbit is a symbol of cowardice. You're right, because a rabbit sees you approaching and they go boom, and they run away as fast as they can. Right. I see. Thank you, Dragana. But yeah, no, I think Putin's going to be happy to push the dictatorship thing as far as he can or as far as is convenient. I think it's going to be interesting. People were saying to see how he treats the funeral of Gorbachev. I think it was already, I don't know whether this was confirmed last night, but I saw people saying on social media that they weren't going to give Gorbachev a state funeral. And he would be the first, Soviet or Russian leader not to get a state funeral since, since before the revolution, which is wild, because basically Gorbachev oversaw the dismantling of the Soviet Union, and Putin thinks it was the biggest mistake ever, right? The cookie donations, a lot of the cookies have already been given to the aid organization that delivers the food. Vlad said there were some remaining that still had to be given to the aid organization for whatever reason, but a lot of the cookies have already been given to them, and they're delivering them with their normal food shipments, because basically they're a Meal on Wheels type. That thing's going to drive me crazy. I mean, I may just grab the phone near me so I can hit off every time. They're a Meals on Wheels organization that delivers food. And now they're going to include the cookies as well for kids. Run Rabbit was written in 1939, but during World War II, it was sung as Run Adolf Run. That's cute. That's very cute. What else? Well, I'll look at another question here. Putin thinks Gorbachev's a failure. Clearly. Oh, well, clearly he thinks Gorbachev's the enemy. Gorbachev oversaw dismantling of his favorite country, you know? I don't know, Rob. Rob's asking, do you have any added information about Iran sending hundreds of drones to Russia to use against the Ukrainians? I thought there was some news in recent days that it was confirmed that a lot of drones did get sent, but that's all I saw. I didn't see anything else. You know? Well, Drew, here's the thing. Genocide is a bad thing, whether you're having a recession or not. And actually, the irony is we're probably not really in a recession yet, although a lot of economists think we will be in one. But, you know, if anything, would you like us to spend more money at home? Because the Republicans don't want us to do that. Biden tried to spend $3 trillion at home with a T, and the Republicans killed the bill along with Manchin. So I'm not sure what you want. No, I'm not sure what you want. So you got to pick a team, Greg. Either be for spending or not for spending. But the Democrats wanted to spend $3 trillion with a T on domestic infrastructure and domestic needs, on childcare, on all sorts of things, and the Republicans killed it. So, I hear you, but and I would also say, I'm guessing you might be a Republican. Maybe you're not. But if you are, I find it interesting that you no longer see the value in national defense, because I was a Republican and I did, and I'm not a Republican anymore and I still do. Even though the Democrats piss me off sometimes too. As I said, you will hear me criticize Biden. Did we see a duck? I see Aflac. Did we have a duck? Did we have a duck? Oh, Kid Aussie. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I was looking over here talking to Greg. I missed it. I apologize. Still hoping to someday get I do have the systems. For example, I am going to start interviewing people because I can do it, and I can do it on my computer and beam it over to TikTok. We had experimented, and what it won't let me do is the gifts on TikTok, which kind of sucks. But I figure if I get a guest that's important enough, I probably don't want you putting hats and mustaches on his or her face. So it probably is a good thing that we turn off the TikTok gifts if we ever do that. But nonetheless, I've got to get some guests because it would be nice to be able to do that. I have not heard how many died in Mariupol. I don't know. Mariupol was a town of 450,000 or so people. And the Russians I wouldn't be surprised if 87,000 died. The Russians destroyed that place for months, absolute months. Thank you. Oh, that was kind of funky. It even comes out the top. Thank you for that. Jim Shudo, what you're saying? I look like Jim Shudo? I like Jim Shudo. I told you I ran into him on the street. He was very nice, and I called him Jim because I knew him for years on TV. I was like, Jim. And I said, I follow you on Twitter. Sorry about that, but we had a nice little chat. He was very nice. What else we got? 90,000 reported today. Daniel O'Neill says, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. You've got a town where they weren't letting, mind you, Mariupol, remember, they weren't letting people escape. So that was the other big thing going on with Mariupol. They were not letting people escape. My opinion on lobbying. So, lobbying is a funny thing because I worked for an organization years ago that did lobbying. I didn't really lobby. I didn't like lobbying. I did a lot of internet stuff, but they liked they were a big lobbyist or a lobbying group, but they were called the Children's Defense Fund, and they lobbied on behalf of poor children. So, they pulled whatever strings they could to get friends in Congress to increase funding for poor children. Does that make them bad lobbyists? Also, an example I like to give people about lobbying is when I was working in the U.S. Senate. I was working for the senator from Alaska, and I worked on foreign policy and arms control, but I also worked on some domestic Alaskan issues, including transportation. And the transportation lobbyists were very close with me, and they would basically give me a lot of stuff to do, and usually I would believe them and do it after getting my boss to approve, because they were representing, for example, there were some lobbyists for small pilots. I think it was the the AOPA, Airline Operators Pilots Association or something like that. And they represent small pilots. So meaning men and women who fly little planes where there's the little, your little seat, the person next to you, and maybe two people behind you. You know what I mean? Very small planes. And they represented them so they knew exactly what was good and bad for their pilots. And they weren't pushing for things like, we want tax cuts for our pilots. It wasn't stuff like that. It was usually new FAA, which is the Federal Aviation Administration, the government agency that oversees aircraft and flying. It was usually something the FAA did where they were looking at aviation overall, but they weren't looking at the needs of small pilots, and it needed a fix. So I always knew when AOPA came to me and said, hey, we got a problem, that they were always straight shooters. Maybe we didn't always do what they said. Again, I would always run it by my boss. I'd give my own opinion, but usually AOPA, when they asked me for something, I do it because they were trustworthy. They never let us, in 5 years, they never led me astray. So my point, that was a long answer, but my point is they're lobbyists too. So lobbyists can be helpful. The problem is there's far too many lobbyists where it's literally just money, 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 money. And it's who's got the most money and cutting benefits for them. For example, prescription drugs in this country, the pharmaceutical companies lobby and they buy off everybody on both sides, Democrats and Republicans. So it's very hard to get stuff done. So I have a mixed feeling on lobbying, depending what kind of lobbying. When doing research in DC once, I shared my bus back to my hotel often with a lobbyist working to lower holds on cards used at the pump. So it comes down to if they help many or few. Yeah, and I guess, okay, many or few, and you can also get into the issue of whether, for example, depending on your politics, right? I didn't have a problem with lobbyists representing poor children. Having said that, clearly, if you want to be a purist about it, they too are a problem because they're trying to get more than the legislative leaders think they should get. So it is a zero-sum game to some degree because there's a pool of money and I'm trying to get more and you're trying to get more. And to some degree, we're not just getting it by... Oop, where'd you go, Sash? Oh, there you are. Sorry, my dog wants to be covered up. Oops, 1 second. There you, oops. Ah! There we go. Okay. Sorry, yes, the dog had surgery. Not too bad of surgery, but she had a wart removed on her leg, but it required stitches. And last night, oh my God, every half hour she woke me up and it was just that like pet, if you've ever had pets, that kind of, it was this like low level whine that was or moan that was so horrible. And half the time she was getting up and trying to jump off my bed. And she's not supposed to jump when she's got like stitches on her leg. And I'm like, no. So the thing kept me up all freaking night. Anyway, she was just whining because she wanted to be covered up. Let me check my Q&A. And I was letting you know why I did it because it's my dog. And I'm giving her extra right now because, if you were to make a college course for political to be in public office, explaining what they would learn. The thing is, you know what it is actually for me? I feel like I would love to teach, but I think I would hate college courses now because from what I've heard, colleges have become just awful. And I certainly would never want to teach I think I wouldn't want to teach undergrads. I don't know. I would love to, but I don't think I want to deal with all the craziness of somebody getting pissed off and then recording you and what did you say? And oh my God, everybody's so like ridiculously sensitive. I don't know. I'd love to, but I just, it's just I think people need to get a little bit more of a backbone. Oops. All right. Have you seen the TikTok of the Ukrainian soldier listening to Fortunate Son while using artillery? Your vid reminded me of it. So badass. Let me see. Fortunate Son. I'm going to Google it on my phone. Fortunate Son Ukrainian. I'll try that. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know that this is artillery, though. Is it this one or no? It's not artillery, though, unless it turns into artillery. I don't know. I want to be careful because I don't want to do... oops. That maybe. I want to be careful because I don't want to do music on my lives because you can get into trouble for that. Not it. Okay, never mind. Not it. There was no operational blackout during Kyiv counteroffensive. Why one now for Kherson? It's a good question. I don't know. That's interesting. Thank you, Annette. That's always one of my favorites. What they're talking about is that the Ukrainians have asked everybody to stop sharing information about the details of what's going on the ground. Don't share stuff on social media. They have stopped, at least for the next week, stop letting journalists embed with Ukrainian troops because they don't want any information to get out there. So that's a really good question as to, again, if this is simply, more shaping, why are they doing that when in the past they didn't? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if anybody else has a sense who's sort of more of you military background folks. But why are they sort of asking for the blackout now, but they weren't before? Now, having said that, they're doing more than they were before. I mean, they have upped the ante significantly. Yeah, but why now? Why not before is the question, Erica. You know what I mean? People are saying they're or Eric. You're either an Eric or an Erica. I'm not sure. But people are saying they didn't ask them to sort of cut all communications and everything before. Okay, thanks, Alec. Please do. I don't see everything that I'm tagged on, but I try to look at it. So I'll look for it. Let me look. HW. It doesn't always show me the names. I've got to click through each question to see the names. So that's the only thing where I can't always just pull it up and know. The blackout has sort of ended because the Ukrainian government is asking Crimeans to help with targeting. I did see that. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think of that. You're right. Zelensky actually, I think, came out and asked the Crimeans to help with targeting Ukrainians in Crimea. What I wasn't sure was he asking them to do that on social media, or was he giving them a secret way to pass the information along or something? Even if Russia wins, do you think it will be a black mark on the Russian army forever? I don't know about forever, but you know what? The Russians did a great job at making themselves the evil empire for, what was it, 80 years? Well, 70 years-ish, I mean, they have convinced several generations of people in the West that they're evil again. They've created mortal enemies with Ukrainians. That's never, okay, thanks, Alec. That's never getting better. So, the Russians would have to literally have a revolution and overthrow their government and become a whole new country that says, we are so sorry. We are a democracy now. Work with us, help us. We want to join the European institutions. We want to set ourselves on track to join the EU, this kind of stuff. But unless they do that, I think they've definitely shot themselves in the foot. I mean, because I think at least, well, the thing is, what you had was you had a lot of younger people who didn't grow up with the Soviet Union. I did. I got to watch all the horrible stuff they did, right? But a lot of younger people didn't. And now the younger people are kind of going, now mind you, the polls are split on younger people, but the younger people at least are witnessing this. Thank you, Kanowski. Are witnessing this and hopefully going, well, that's not cool. You're killing a lot of people. That's kind of sick, Dragana was saying they simply don't want the Russians to know where they are because it's an active and possibly prolonged operation. Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing it's ramped up. It's ramped up. It's definitely more significant. Oh, hey, Marianne, it's more significant than what was going on before. It's certainly up. What I mean is the intensity is more. They're doing more bombings of bridges, more bombings of artillery, more bombings of et cetera, so that I don't know. I still think it's an interesting question why they wouldn't ask the public to try to be quiet otherwise. Having said that, if the Ukrainians always said, hey, don't share videos of explosions, which they were doing early on, don't do this, don't do that. After a while, I think people might do it anyway. People might be like, well, you keep saying that, whatever. Whereas now, out of the blue, the Ukrainians said, don't do it. It might impact more like, whoa, right? That's a whole other, well, we've got commies who are also like in their 70s or 80s who love Russia too, and some of them who are 76 or however old Trump is. But yeah, no, there's people who love Russia for various reasons. Some of them are just corrupted, and other ones just go back, and it was a whole different world back in the 60s and 70s, and they were Soviet sympathizers, basically. Dragana says she thinks this is a feint, and the Ukrainian force will just smack them from another direction. Oh, what do you think is a feint? Sorry, I wasn't looking. I used to respect Russia. 23 million dead in World War II. Now they're the NZs. Yeah, And again, look closely at World War II. Look at the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Look at the secret deal they had to split up Eastern Europe, Poland, and everything else. Look what the Russians did as a result. I mean, yeah, the Russians lost 23 million people because it's an interesting question. Yes, the Russians had to fight the Nazis because they were, if they didn't, they would lose their country. But at the same time, the Russians were fighting in order to steal half of Europe, as Russia does. Somebody had written today, and I thought it was very funny. It said it was somebody talking. It was a non-American talking, a non-Anglophone talking about Gorbachev dying. And he said something about Gorbachev ruling Russia until 1991, when Russia ceased, when Russia ceased to exist. And they meant ceased to exist, but they wrote ceased to exist, SEIZED, or the Soviet Union. And I said, I love that. I love the typo, because it really is kind of true, though, that the Soviet Union ceased to exist and Russia ceases to exist. I mean, in terms of their foreign policy. And certainly what they did in World War II. I'm sorry, but it detracts a lot from it, because, in the back of their minds, they were like, yeah, the Nazis are bad people. We've got to stop them. But actually, we were friends with them 2 years ago, so they're not that bad of people. That's the first problem. And second of all, we're fighting them, but we're actually fighting them because A, we don't want to lose, but B, we're fighting them because we want to take half of Europe and imprison them and do to them exactly what the Nazis would have done. And that's what they did. The Russians, the Soviet Union became the Nazis. So it's like, okay. And we don't say it enough, and we need to say it more, because we let the Russians walk around and pull this. Mind you, it also reminds me, frankly, of, I don't want to get Democrat, Republican here, but when Republicans sort of say, well, we were great on race relations. Lincoln was a Republican, President Lincoln, in the Civil War. The Civil War was 1860. If you've got to go back to 1860 to find a member of your party who liked black people, then maybe you've got a problem in your party. And I feel the same way with the Russians, which is, you got to go back to 1940 or 39 or whatever, or 41, whatever it was, or, well, let's say 45 when the war ended. You got to go back to 1945 to, to show the world that you actually were decent people. Then maybe you're not decent people if that's the most recent example you can find. And frankly, that example, as we said, was based on you wanting to steal half the continent and imprison them and kill them. So, yeah, I have zero sympathy for the Russians as far as the way they treated Europe. I mean, I was there. I visited the Soviet Union, visited East Germany. I mean, East Berlin and Leipzig, but didn't get to see much of the oppression. But boy, did I in the Soviet Union in 1984. Damn, that was a freaking police state, that place. Fucking police state. It was Goebbels? Oh, that penned the Iron Curtain that Stalin would create in Europe? That's funny. I didn't know that. So Dragana is saying, this retaking of Kherson is a feint, and Ukrainian forces will just smack them up the river. That has been their successful tactic so far. Okay. Your school was older than 1860. That's cute. All right, guys, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to stop because yesterday I went a little long and the throat was getting a little vibrating again. But as I said, I'm trying to talk a little more softly, so I think we're good. I'm going to say let's skip the. I'm going to skip the Discord tonight, since again my throat was being a little weird. I will do the recap, but it feels pretty good. Oh, and yes, so on the Discord, we had our second auction ended, and Melissa won the men's Vyshyvanka, which was very pretty. I don't know if I've still got a picture of it here, but it was a very pretty, the Ukrainian men's shirt. So congrats, Melissa. And I'm going to either tomorrow or Monday. Well, if Monday might be a holiday. So Tuesday, I'm going to get it off to her because I brought it with me in Chicago so I could send it off from here. And she's in the States, which makes it a lot easier to ship. I don't have, oh, here it is. Nope, I don't have it handy. But anyway, it's a beautiful red, white with the red, the red on it, Vyshyvanka. It's very nice. But yeah, so we are up to around $4,000, guys, on the artillery unit we are trying to sponsor with the Ukrainian army. I will do my summary in a second, but if you guys can help, I'd appreciate it. I'm going to again put where you can give, my PayPal, my Venmo, or my Cash App. And what we are doing to remind folks is we're trying to raise $5,000, which will end up going, well, it's going to a guy in Ukraine, but it's going to end up going to a nonprofit that helps Ukrainian military. Things that they bought for them before have been sleeping bags, thermal imaging goggles, Starlink internet, food, medicine, you name it. So lots of different things. And they've got a whole different kind of things you can sponsor. And one of the things you can do is if you raise $5,000, you can sponsor a Ukrainian artillery, a howitzer. And they will put your message on the side of the howitzer. They'll leave it there for the war. They will get a video of the howitzer with your thing on it, firing and the whole deal. And I just think it's kind of funny. I mean, as far as Ukrainian meme forces go, I just think it's kind of funny. So if you guys can help, I'd appreciate it. We've got around $4,000 so far. I think we can make the 5,000. So I'm going to hold off for the 5,000. 100% of the money is going over there. Thank you, Daniel. 100% of the money is going over there. I'm not taking any of it. And there you go. So, but as I said, if we get 5,000, and then I just hope to God that my taxes don't take this as income to me, the money you're sending me, because then I'm going to owe another $1,000. But I'm hoping they don't, because this is a work-related thing. So hopefully it works that way. I don't know. We're going to figure out the message. What we're going to, I mean, you guys have given me a lot of suggestions, but I'm trying not to write things down yet. But we're going to, I'm going to take suggestions from you guys. We're going to write them down. And I think maybe even on the Discord or something, I'll have folks help to narrow them down to maybe 3 or 4. And then we'll just have you guys vote on them, well, it's not a donation because the problem is it's in Ukraine. We're giving it to this guy who's coordinating. So right. So it's not an American nonprofit. It's not a write-off. It's not a write-off as a donation. It's probably going to be a write-off because this is my work. I mean, we are buying advertising for my work in Ukraine, and I'm raising money from you guys to do it. So that's the way I'm going to look at it. Thank you, Marion. That's the way I'm looking at it as. I try to be cautious with my taxes, but I think that passes the spell test because literally this is my work and I'm raising money from you guys, which is income, and the money's going out and it's being spent in Ukraine on advertising for the work. So, all right, so I started by talking about the Ukrainian counteroffensive and how multiple forces are calling it a shaping operation and not a counteroffensive, meaning the Ukrainians are trying to soften up the land, so to speak, make conditions harder for the Russians rather than it being truly trying to take back large amounts of land yet. Oh, I was going to say for you guys, I'm sorry, last little point. You can find out how to donate by going to the profile link in my profile. Click it. It says beacons, blah, blah, blah. And when you click it, TikTok lately has been showing an ad or something. When that comes up, click the upper left corner, and then it'll show my list of links. you'll find my PayPal, my Venmo, my Cash App. They're all Aravosis. So PayPal's at Aravosis, Cash App is $Aravosis, and Venmo is at Aravosis. So now you know. You don't even have to go there. The Ukrainian forces established fire control over 2 key bridges in Kherson. That means that they are able to effectively blow up anything passing the bridges with their artillery, which is huge. The BBC reports that the Russians are refusing to issue passes for the Zaporizhzhia to visit the Zaporizhzhia plant to the United Nations in the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency delegation. The Gazprom, the Russian energy outfit, has shut off natural gas to Germany again. Big surprise there. Russian independent media is reporting that Russia will likely face an acute shortage of weapons by the end of 2022, including guided missiles, artillery, and armored vehicles. The White House is preparing more military aid for Ukraine to be announced in a few days. Ukraine is receiving new deliveries of artillery rounds from Sweden. The Polish prime minister thinks the EU should be ready to accept Ukraine in a few years. I think that's bull. Not from him, but meaning the Europeans are, the French and Germans are never going to allow it. Mariupol, reportedly the Russians have poured bleach and concrete over the dead bodies of the people they killed at that drama theater in Mariupol in order to rebuild the theater and hide the evidence. Kind of sick. The Estonian foreign minister says that they are going to be stopping most Russians from entering their country within weeks. The EU, meanwhile, the European Union, has reached an agreement to rescind or suspend an agreement they had with the Russians to facilitate Russian tourists coming to Europe. And the Russians are now saying they're going to retaliate by stopping Europeans from coming to Russia on vacation, which I mentioned. If you'd like to get kidnapped, definitely go to Russia on vacation if you want to be kidnapped and held for ransom. 2008, I was going to say, I thought it was 2007 or 2008. Oh, hi, Mrs. Mahalati. The way we're doing it is via my PayPal, Venmo, or Cash App. I don't know if you use any of those, but that's what I'm using to raise money for the artillery, if that's what you were asking. There isn't really a website other than my PayPal URL. Hang on, I've got to see if I can pull up my PayPal URL. I've got my short URL. Let me see. It's either Aravosis or John Aravosis. Let me see. Okay, it's not Aravosis. PayPal.com/ John Aravosis, maybe? Ugh, shoot. I hate how PayPal does this. They've got the little short URL thing, but it's not always very easy to figure out where it is. Yeah, I can't find my short Venmo me. Perfect. Thank you. Look at you. My mother has no idea what Venmo is. I'm so impressed with you. Oh, and then I just showed the latest meme from the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense that was very funny, kind of making fun of the Russians and laughing. Yes, my Cash App is $Aravosis, my last name. So yes, you can do that. Yeah, it says America. You can do America Blog Media. America Blog. I've got two. Yeah, that is me. I've got two PayPals. One is Aravosis. One is John Aravosis. One of them says America Blog Media. The other doesn't. But that's me. Yeah, America Blog was my blog, and America Blog Media is just like the LLC I use for a lot of my work. So yeah. All right, guys. But yeah, thank you for helping. Again, we are gonna reach 5,000. I'm excited. And I am going to head off so I can preserve my voice a little bit. You can also, you can donate to my tips on TikTok as well. I think only 1 or 2 people have done that. But if you go to my TikTok profile, it says tips. I'm going to count anything that comes in there, over the last week and for the next week, at least until this is done, as a donation for the artillery. So, yeah. No, I think we're going to reach it. I'm also going to include some of the money that I raised for like the auction money, because the auction money was raised for Ukraine. So, and since this is going to help soldiers and stuff, I'm going to include that'll give us another couple $100. So I think we're going to do it. I'm going to keep badgering you guys, but I think we can do it. All right. Bye, everybody. I'm going to sign off, preserve the voice. And tomorrow, same bat time, Thursday, 5 p.m. Central Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, US. Okay. Bye, guys. Actually, I'd love to get our name on the side of a HIMARS, but we could only dream of such things. That may be the operational security thing might be a problem of that too. But all right, bye, guys. Thank you.